Okay, good morning. My name is Adam White. I am McAlster's Economic Development Director. It's a tremendous privilege for me to be here today speaking with you. I want to thank Heath, I want to thank Mike for setting this thing up today, and I'd like to thank you for watching this. The intent by the end of this is you've taken away some tools that can help you progress your business forward, to get started, to have the courage to actually initiate, and how what you're doing as a small business owner is going to help develop McAlester. This is beyond you. This is meta of even your small business. What you're going to be doing is setting up future generations for success. With that, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Before I give a real thorough introduction of who I am and how I got here, I do want to share a story with you. This is actually a bit of a tragic story, but this has been one of the pivotal stories in my life that's changed how I've done things, how I view problems, how I come to challenges, and the way that we need to innovate to overcome them. In the spring of 1947, there was a series of wildfires in the western United States, west of the Rockies. Now, this series of wildfires was one of the worst in the history of the United States. This was in the wake of World War II, and there was a new program that the United States Forest Service was trying that was taking paratroopers, the guys who would jump in behind enemy lines. You've seen on the movie like Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan. These guys would jump behind enemy lines, fight the enemy. What the Forest Service decided we could do with these large rural fires that they had no other way to get access to is they would take these guys after they come home from the Second World War. They would train them as firefighters, or if they had firefighting experience previously, wonderful, and they would jump in behind the fire lines, right? So they would create these working blocks of fire breaks. So if you can jump in, this is what the Forest Service thought, if you can jump in with a rifle and a radio, you can jump in with a chainsaw and some gasoline to start fires. And historically, that had worked very well. For this story, this is the story of the Mann Gulch Fire. That's Man with two N's, M-A-N-N Gulch Fire. This was one of the hottest and fastest moving fires in all of 1947. In a season of already bad fires, this was the worst. The Forest Service decided to send in their elite airborne firefighters. They're called the smoke jumpers. At this time, they had about 200 of them nationwide. And they sent in 15 of these firefighters, these elite veteran firefighters, to go in and create a break to allow more time for water to drop in, to evacuate people out of the area. And from that, they said, these are the guys for the job. We need to push these elite firefighters in. No one else could really contain it. However, I do want to share the story, and this, again, is a tragic story of what happened to these firefighters. What was supposed to happen was these 15 firefighters were supposed to jump into the area. They were supposed to set up a controlled burn that would allow more time for people to evacuate, for more property to be saved, and they were trying to mitigate the speed that the fire was moving forward. However, this was pretty standard procedure for them. They've done this 100 times before. They were trained to do this. They were equipped to do this. Everything that they were supposed to do was basically a textbook fire control operation. But this situation was something that they had not trained for. It was something they did not have experience in. And this was a situation that was evolving as they landed on the ground. This was something new. Without going into graphic details, these smoke jumpers followed policy, training, and their own experience in how to control a fire. They cut trees, but the fire was moving too fast and was too hot. They radioed in strategic water drops to help mitigate the speed and the heat from the forest, but the fire was too hot and was moving too fast. When the fire got close, they used their fire protection bundles, which are something like a fire protection sleeping bag. You could get inside of it, zip it over, and wait for the fire to pass you over, and you would survive. It's an emergency measure, but it could save your life. But this fire was too hot and moved too fast. These men did everything right. They did everything that they were trained and expected to do, and all but one lost their life in the fire. The lone survivor later recalled what happened on that mountainside. The summary of his recollection is this: he found that the situation that he was working in was something new. And after pleading with the other firefighters to change their plan, he decided to go against what had previously worked and innovate. When the fire was moving too quick to contain, he realized the heavy chainsaw that he was using was of no use to cut down the trees, and so he discarded it, and he moved much quicker without the heavy chainsaw. When he saw that the fire burned through the buffer areas quickly, he decided to implement a controlled burn in his area where he was at to basically create a protected area to prevent the area that he was in from being engulfed. So the traditional line of thought, the expected line of thought, the professional line of thought was, we're going to set up a fire breakthrough here, wait for the fire to hit it, and then we're going to be on the other side of it. We'll be okay. What this firefighter did was say, okay, well, it's burning through these buffer zones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a fire right here, let it burn at a small level, and slowly push out. But what I'm going to do is, once it gets out of this small 10-foot bubble, I'm going to move inside of it because the fire material's already been burned up, and then I'm going to set my protection bundle in that location so that the fire wouldn't have the fuel to burn through it. He dropped all of his issued equipment, and he dropped his previous training so that he could save his life. He attempted to convince all the more senior firefighters around him to change plans and join him. All the senior firefighters refused. They trusted their past success, what had worked for them historically. In fact, it was only after they saw that he had done in securing a safe zone and a controlled burn that they tried to join him. But as they saw where he was at, and they were within visual distance of where he was located, they kept holding on to their heavy equipment. Okay, these smoke jumpers carry in about 100 pounds of equipment with them. These are tough guys. They're strong guys. But even after fighting fires for hours, they're exhausted, they're dehydrated. And that extra burden of even just carrying their chainsaws slowed them down. And the fire consumed them. Fire professionals and Forest Service agencies have reviewed and analyzed what happened on the side of that hill for decades, and they always come to the same conclusion. Dropping their tools, what has worked for them historically, would have saved their lives. You see, every one of them was in about a half-mile distance from the safe zone that young firefighter had created, but they wouldn't drop their tools to get there in time. The survivor was the youngest man on the team, but because of that, he wasn't bound to rely on experience. And I don't care if you're running a flower shop or you are reviewing the failure of the Afghan war campaign, this lesson applies to you. Always realize when the situation is changing, and currently, it has been changing. The world situation since 2020 has evolved quicker and quicker and quicker, and what has worked for us historically may not work moving forward. Know when the tools that have saved you in the past have only become a burden that weigh you down and prevent you from being agile enough to evolve. If you're not willing to drop the tools when they've lost their use, those same tools can kill you. This is what we're going to discuss today, which tools we need to drop to prevent failure. Now, a quick introduction on me. I grew up in an Amish community, so I don't like talking about myself very much. But just to kind of let you know my background and where I'm coming from on this, I'll give you a quick 60-second introduction on me. Like I said at the beginning, my name is Adam White, and this is how I came to be the economic developer from McAlester. My parents were teachers when I was young. They moved around from location to location, so I went to 3 or 4 schools growing up. Graduated out of a small school in Tulsa area. After that, my parents had some sicknesses. I had a few small football scholarships, I had an acceptance to one of the military academies. However, I wanted to stay close to my parents in case something happened and they needed me to respond quickly. So I took a military scholarship and attended Oklahoma State University. Go Pokes. After that, I met my wife my sophomore year there. We got married in college. She's wonderful. Her name's Amanda. Once we graduated, we moved to upstate New York. My first unit there was with 10th Mountain Division. I was a reconnaissance and surveillance guy. I loved that job. It was a lot of fun. 2 combat tours to Afghanistan. After those 2, I kind of thought, okay, well, for the next 20 years, I'm going to be doing the same thing until I retire, just Afghanistan, Afghanistan, Afghanistan. I wanted a little bit different challenge, a little bit more dynamic situation, so I had applied for the Special Operations community and was picked up. I served as a Special Operations Civil Affairs officer for about 5 years after that. And Civil Affairs is one of the most wide and diverse career fields within the military. So you can do everything from building a well in Africa to doing a medical drive in South America to countering Russian subversion efforts in Eastern Europe. And within those, that was my field of specialty, was governance and counter-governance. That's a fancy way and a polite way of saying building alternative governance systems, or like a shadow government. And how do we counter that? How do we subvert the bad guys' shadow government that they're building? So it was a lot of fun. However, on my last deployment overseas, I had an old Afghanistan injury that caught up with me when I lost a game of hide and seek with an IED. I was a dummy and didn't take care of it as I was progressing, and so there's no charging the hill story on how I got hurt at the end of it. Just took a funny step and needed a few back surgeries. Doctor said, hey, you can't be a cool guy anymore, and I said, well, I don't want to play anymore, and then I departed. We moved back to Oklahoma at the pristine time for any economic opportunities, right when COVID was kicking off, so that was spring of 2020. From there, I decided to launch a new company. I've always had an entrepreneurial streak. I've started several businesses. I usually just get bored with them after I set them up and sell them off, but one that I'm still juggling and not sure if I want to kill it or not yet is Tomahawk Social Innovations. Basically, we teach some skills that we picked up within the soft community, and it's a lot of fun. I get to bring a lot of those skills here into the local government area. In late 2020, we moved down to Indianola. Didn't know anyone on the plane. If you don't know where Indianola's at, so most people don't either, so that's okay. But we picked up a small 80-acre ranch. We're trying to run it like hippies, so we're doing a bunch of organic stuff out there and doing regenerative agriculture. When we moved out there and we're doing the homestead thing, I was looking for some opportunity in the area as well. I had no intention of working for a local government when I moved here. And then I saw something for economic development in Eufaula, and I said, hey, you know, I've got some experience in economics. Let me throw my hat in the ring. Long story short, they picked me up, and we saw a lot of success in Eufaula with what we had done. And that's definitely a team effort. That's not an Adam White attaboy. We built a great team, and the entire community came together. We saw the average income rise about 40%, and the Gini coefficient, which is kind of the measure of an even economic spread throughout the area. We saw that develop a middle class, which is kind of where my heart is and where my passion is. McAllister's economic developer, when he left, he shot me over a message and said, hey, you ought to apply for this thing in McAlester. And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. Long story short, that's how I got here. And I'll say this. I am very excited to be working in McAlester. It's a very different game, and how we took the approach in Eufaula is a different approach to how I'm taking McAlester, going back to dropping that tools. What worked in Eufaula, principles may roll over into McAlester, but overall McAlester is a little bit more complex, a little bit larger game, and there's a lot more history here. So I'm very excited to jump in and be your economic developer, hopefully for a few years, and we'll get some wins out of this place. So this next graph, and I've only got a few slides, I promise. These concentric rings moving in and out, that is my job. These approach spheres to these different types of entities in these different regions. So McAlester, our region, state and tribal, and federal government manufacturing. This is my job, working up and down this day in and day out. I'm not going to read it to you, but I can tell you that this center bubble, McAlester Resilience and Development, is what I get up for in the morning. This is what makes me excited. This is what inspires me, and this is what says, you know what, I'm going to keep doing this even if we hit roadblocks, even if we hit challenges. Because ultimately, I have a people-centric focus of economic development. It's great if the city's making more money. It's great if tax revenues are up. Those are all wonderful things, and they're good indicators, but that's not the end goal, the end state of what we're trying to get to. I have a people-focused economic development strategy, and I have spiritual reasons for that. I think people are made in the image of God, and from that, I think that they deserve a dignified existence. Okay, so when we're developing people, when we're developing them, I want them to know that we're not just doing it because it looks better on an Excel sheet. I want my children to have better opportunities than I have, and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren who I'll never meet. I want them to know that we started something that they're going to benefit from. We're taking a long-term view of economic development. And I do hold to this localism on how do we pull money from these entities into McAlester, and then how are we taking the money that's in McAlester, making sure that it's staying here. Okay, so we're making sure we're plugging up economic leaps and having wealth development, not just keeping money around, and making sure our purchasing power is going to benefit moving forward. from all these, I will say that I want to be action-oriented with all these things. So a lot of people can come and they can discuss stuff that they're trying to do, and that's wonderful. But unless it's helping out with the long term and it's actually going to create action, it really is just discussion. Okay, on the left side of the screen in the red, that's where we're talking with a lot of folks in town. This is where we think we're currently at. Economic stagnation, if you can't see it on the screen, economic stagnation, bleeding talent, generational gaps, middle class regression, and reduced purchasing power. On the right, in the green, is our desired situation. If I'm blocking it, it's economic expansion, talent retention, multi-generational partnerships, and middle class expansion, as well as exchange resilience. I want to start by saying that every action that we take as a community is going to pull us either into the red or into the green. Communities are living organisms, and they do not stay at rest. So we are constantly moving into a worse situation or a better situation. And I'll tell you, by not doing anything, nature and apathy pulls you, or entropy will pull you into the red. You have to keep fighting to stay alive, just like any animal that's out running around in the woods. Unless it's moving and working, it's dying. I also want to say this, that I am not sufficient for this task. This is a community effort. I know it's in my job title, but it's beyond me, and I could do everything right like the firefighters did in Man Gulch, and we could still fail. That's just reality, and that's where I need your help as the community. We have a few different approaches that we are taking on this larger level to pull things over into the green. That includes smart analytics, so that's in identifying economic governance gaps. Where are we not creating an environment to allow small business to flourish and entrepreneurs to flourish? We're taking a data approach. A lot of things are built just on experience, but unless we can see it with numbers and kind of prove it out and flesh it out, yeah, this is working or this isn't, it's really just kind of conjecture. Organizational development, and that is a huge part of small business within a community, is developing coalitions, streamlining economic development, basically developing an economic battle book so that everyone, if you're starting a small business in McAlester, we want to hand you a packet and say, this is how you succeed in McAlester. These are the programs that are out there. These are opportunities that you're missing, and these are challenges that other people have faced, and this is how they've overcome them. I also want to initiate some things that are going to catalyze entrepreneurship. Why would you want to start a business in McAlester? I ask people that a lot, and I ask small business owners who have come to McAlester, why do you want to start a small business in McAlester? Why would you not just start a small business on the outside of city limits and not have to pay sales tax? That's a question that a lot of people will scratch their heads on and say, well, I don't know, that's what I did. A lot of people who start small businesses in McAlester or bring their manufacturing jobs to McAlester, they have a historical connection to the town. But if someone is wanting to innovate and they're from a Dallas or an Oklahoma City or a Tulsa or a Fort Smith and we're centrally located between them all, what reasons would you have to start your business in McAlester? And if we have to hesitate and really think about it, that's the wrong answer. We should be able to say, this is why we're wanting to start a business in McAlester, because we have the opportunities with the government there and the community to do X, Y, Z, and that's a unique, and I would say the best environment to start a business. That's what we're trying to cultivate. I also want to say that we're setting up an outcomes-based economic development. Again, thinking back to the Man Gulch fire, what tools do we need to drop? Just because we've done it historically, has that worked out for us? We need to be able to reinvent and redesign where we're moving with economic development. With that, we're doing opportunity mapping. So speaking with local business owners, local organizations, to say, okay, here's what the current situation is, here's the current landscape for economics. We understand it, so let's start making policies that correspond with it. I also like to take a by, with, and through approach to this. So again, I get a business card that has my name on it and says Economic Development Director, but this has to be done with community partners. This cannot be done alone, and anyone who thinks that they can do economic development alone is a fool. Finally, we're building an environment that wins, and that's the culmination of everything that we've talked about. I think everyone would say this is what winning looks like in McAlester, and that's how we're going to get there. The big how in that, if you missed it, is the problem that we're going to have to come to in a few weeks and months to design what is the actual game plan moving forward. Finally, I'm coming to my challenge to you within this. being fully honest and repeating again that I cannot do this alone. Economic development is a challenge for everyone in this community. It's for you. I need your help in this. But even for your small business alone, if you'd say, I want nothing to do with anyone else, I can do this, let me try it. This is my challenge to you, and this is how you can have success in McAlester. There's a quote by an old Greek philosopher named Heraclitus. And I'm going to paraphrase it, but the summary is, within an army, if you break guys down in groups of 100, that 10 people shouldn't even be there. They have no business being in a war. 80 people are just targets. Okay, they're just bodies out there filling the space. 9 people are real fighters, and we were very happy to have them. But one person in that group is a true warrior, and he's going to bring the other 99 home. Now, within that, I want you to know, as a small business owner or an entrepreneur, that you should not fall within that 80 or the 10 at the bottom. You are somewhere either in that 9 who are great fighters, and we're so thankful to have you in the community, or you're the true warrior of entrepreneurship, a true warrior, a true leader within economic development, and we need to be supporting you in any way that we can. All that to say that without knowing where your community must go and knowing that you're going to fight to get there, there's no vision, you're just juggling. Okay, you have to understand how we can go from that red to the green on the previous slide. And if you don't know where we're trying to go, any action you take is basically punching smoke. It's a lot of efforts without moving towards something or marching towards something. So know where you want your community to go and go fight for it. 2, love your neighbor by serving your neighbor. Entrepreneurship is social problem solving 100% of the time. How can you do that? Well, a simple one is basically make one connection per week and solve one problem per week. Every business that I've started that I've followed that methodology of developing one extra network connection, one extra hub or node, and then solving one social problem a week, I've had success. So do that. Find ways to love your community by serving your community. And 3 is to be a champion for your community. If you're in that 9 good fighters, I'm going to implore you and beg you and encourage you to be that true champion within the group, to be the warrior in the group. You matter in economic development because you have the ability and the opportunity with that purpose. You have a duty to yourself, to your community, to future generations, and we owe it to past generations to see that you haven't wasted your time on trivialities or a hedonistic approach to business development. You can be a hero to your community and someone who makes a real difference in transforming the culture and the mentality of your neighbors and your community and your city. And like those concentric circles on our previous slide, it just expands out. The impact that you make, you are not an isolated atom floating like a speck of dust. You are a node within a network. And every action that you take impacts other people, and it grows out and out and out. And the effects that you have are truly remarkable when you understand how people actually are. We're not atoms on Mars that have no impact. It doesn't matter when anything happens if a meteor hits them. People impact people, and people inspire people, and people catalyze people to make larger change and greater change. And you can do that. And it works negatively too. You could be an anti-champion. You could run down the community. You could be negative. And guess what? It's much easier to start that fire than it is to be the champion that goes and puts it out and says, you know what? Instead of starting a fire, we're going to be planting a forest here and setting it up for future generations. Now within this, I believe in you, and I'm going to be with you to support you throughout every step of this process of you being a champion. I do want to thank you for listening to me talk for about 25 minutes today. So thank you for your time and attention. I hope you gained something, and I'm looking forward to cheering you on in your success. Thank you.